All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again for the Pando Days 24-25 project premieres. My name's Matthew Manos. I'm the founder of a design firm here in Los Angeles called Very Nice. I'm also a faculty member at USC and a longtime Pando maniac as well. I'm co-hosting the Pando Days premiere events with my dear friend and collaborator Eugene Shirley. We're trading off the hosting of these events. And Pando Days is the program that makes it easy for young people to do something for the world and for their communities. I think right now there's been many reminders of the need of that and the power of community to come together to make a big impact. I'm really excited to be with you today because we're going to be able to see what another of these project teams has been up to. Each team that you're going to see in this Pando Days event, as well as our other recordings, are given 15 minutes to present summaries of their projects to experts. And then we will follow that with a casual 20 to 30-minute discussion on the project with a panel of experts. These premiere events are recorded, and early this year, the recordings, along with all the project materials, will begin to be posted on each team's dedicated webpage, which you can find on the pandopopulous.com website. Projects are then judged by a distinguished panel of specialists with honors and prizes and networking opportunities galore at the Pando Awards. So without further ado, let's get started. Today we will be hearing from Cal State University Fullerton, whose Pando Days team is represented by Rohan and Alan. The CSU Fullerton team was with us last year to showcase an ingenious new software solution that's designed to help food banks and pantries get food faster to the people who need it most. And now they've returned again to build on last year's success and improve that system that they developed, strengthening the software and learning from the market as they prepare to deploy it broadly. Super exciting. Rohan and Alan, what you showed us last year was really terrific and important. Any system that's moving food around faster and better means ultimately that you'll get more food to more people with fewer resources, and that's huge. So we're very excited to hear more, and I'm going to throw it over to you for that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Matthew. I'll go ahead and share my screen here so we can get started. Awesome. Baguette, modern software for the quiet giants of our country. Today, more than ever, food insecurity is a shameful reality for millions of our neighbors. We know over 40% of CSU students in a recent survey have reported as being food insecure. We're a part of the statistic. 46 million Americans also are. Now, just to lay a framework, I want to speak to what we consider to be the most basic framework in the food equity ecosystem, that of the neighbors, food pantries, and food banks. Neighbors are how we refer to clientele who are food insecure and frequent food pantries and food banks and rely on food stamps. Now, the little diagram to your left basically depicts the strength of the relationships and the frequency of interactions between these three parties. The bulk of interactions in the ecosystem today occur between neighbors and food pantries. Pantries are local sites in your neighborhood where people visit on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to get food. They're often located nearby. Food banks are larger warehouses of food. They distribute food to these pantries and mobile pantries and such. And this makes up maybe the second most frequent set of interactions, primarily between staff and volunteers. And occasionally, of course, food banks, especially in larger cities, also host food drives. And hence, that's where the relationship between neighbors and food banks exists. Now, my name is Rohan. My team member Alan is on the call today. Our developer Michael is not here today, but we have been ingratiated in this ecosystem as clients in the past, neighbors, and today we work with pantries and speak to food banks to work on this problem. So we've given you sort of our view on things and how we understand things, but to speak to the research that's happened in this space and in our work, John Hopkins has been conducting research on digital tooling in the food equity ecosystem for actually over 5 6 years now. They've released 5 to 6 papers, some of them peer reviewed, including this one, and this is sort of just one of the papers that we found to be meaningful as validating what we were seeing on the ground. They found that the lack of digital tooling was playing a very resulting in a very real impact in the way that clients were visiting the pantries. Oftentimes, food banks and pantries, due to a lack of appropriate software, had to close or shut, not hold a distribution that day. They found that features that were much wanted included online shopping and client tracking, and really anything that could replace an in-person service that could be improved if just being done online or through software was a positive. And I think for us the most meaningful finding from their study was the lack of user-centered design in a lot of the existing tools. User-centered design, as I'm sure all of you guys know, it just means that it's something that is easy for the individual in question to use, something that's natural for them. What we find easy may not be easy for somebody that is going to a food pantry. And we had the pleasure of speaking to the team behind this study, Martin and Co. And we're actively working with them in the development of our software. We hope that in the future, their team would be able to use our software in Maryland. But that's an ongoing process. Now, again, bringing it back to the person, the people, this is a quote directly from the USDA toolkit document. Essentially, it was a focus group that they held, and this was poignant for us to read this. It said, "The hardest thing for me is knowing that I need help from anyone. I'm still embarrassed when I go to the store for food and I have to use my food stamp card. People here know what that is. The other day, somebody actually stopped me and asked me if it was for food stamps. Can you believe it?" Digression as everybody talks together about how embarrassing food stamps can be. So really what this speaks to is the stigma of having to get help. You have a problem, people put forth solutions, but it's on the individual to go and get help. And that's not easy. It's admitting that some things are out of your control. And the way interactions are set up in the ecosystem today play into this. Having to go wait in line, having to go speak to people about what you can get and how frequently you can come, so on and so forth, plays into that. So the bulk of interactions I had mentioned occur between neighbors and pantries. So we want to double down on this space and these interactions, the volunteer neighbor pantry triangle. This is by far the most crucial aspect of this ecosystem. If this is improved right now, everybody is in a better place today. So pantries are overwhelmed. They struggle to retain volunteers, and they provide a deeply substandard experience to neighbors. Volunteers, for their part, they're often left disconnected. They have trouble finding organizations that work with their lifestyle, and they struggle being coordinated. And really, retention is the key word here for both the pantries and volunteers, bringing them to having them come back time and time again. And lastly, as far as neighbors are concerned, they have to wait hours in line haphazardly. Their unique dietary needs from a cultural perspective are not accounted for. And therefore, we see that there's dissatisfaction on every level of this ecosystem. And that's what we want to address with our software.
Now, let me speak to what Baguette is. This is a glimpse of our software today, and it aims to address all three parties in this sense that Rohan just spoke to. And what Baguette is, it's a mobile and web application. And now with pantries, they're able to send direct and relevant information to their volunteers and neighbors. And volunteers are now able to register for appointments or, shifts without any confusion. Because as it stands, they have to go online, potentially find a number. If they're lucky, they'll see a form they can fill out, and there's a chance that it'll take weeks for the volunteer coordinator to contact them. Now, that's all automated with our software. And finally, for neighbors, they're able to tap into our network of pantries to see what available resources are around them to better serve their needs. But how are we actually moving the needle with this software? So we're trying to increase the number of neighbors served while reducing pantry wait times with our dynamic staff dashboard, now able to maintain a queue, see what client is currently being assisted, what is your needs, and then clients can actually register for their own appointment in the comfort of their own home. Moreover, let's see how we're actually addressing the staff. Um, if you go to the next slide, we're better helping pantry by serving the communities by collecting all this data that would otherwise be lost through paper and pencil or complicated Excel sheets. This data is invaluable to better understand their communities. And moreover, this data helps USDA agencies and other agencies give them grants. This is what defines the key difference between a pantry from getting a grant or not, like their impact around their community. And this is all being automated. Moreover, we're bringing attention back to volunteers because from our market research, we realize that volunteers are what keeps these operations running. Without them, pantries would be struggling because we've seen that pantries typically only have one or two staff on board. Typically, it's just a volunteer operating these distributions, which now we're able to collect the hours that they worked so that we could better appreciate them because an appreciated volunteer is a volunteer that will show up for a second week. Now, this is the current competitive landscape, but what we are looking into right here is that our competition is out of date and out of touch with our community. We've spent nearly 2 years talking with these pantries and food banks, volunteers alike, and seeing what their needs are specifically to better address them.
So, to really bring it out back to the big picture, how are we creating value for pantries? Is we're removing the pain of maintaining data, sensitive data, and creating records. This hurdle has prevented them from really collecting client information for a long time in many cases, or where they do collect information, it's very archaic and hard to keep track of. We're reducing the time spent running their operations with our software. Um, we've seen in the case of Saddleback Church, which is very close to Cal State Fullerton, they run a very large pantry operation every weekend, 500 clients. They recently just implemented a very simple check-in software. It's something that a church member made. It was very bare bones, just to see if could it work for them. They found that they reduced their pantry operation time by over 2 hours. Normally, a 6 hour pantry operation thing became just under 4 hours. We're in talks to be able to deploy our software there, having seen the benefit that it can give them. We want to boost community engagement and help volunteer retention. Um, and really, this ties into creating an ecosystem where there is none today. We want pantries to be able to communicate with each other and with the neighbors. And as a neighbor, we want it to be as easy as possible for you to be able to get food. So, from the comfort of your home with your phone, through the Baguette app, just be able to sign up at Pantry A and Pantry C if those are the ones that are near you and work with your schedule, and get food on Thursday and Saturday that work for you. Not have to go to both pantries in person and see if you qualify and sign a bunch of papers and potentially have to identify yourself and so on and so forth. We just want to remove any hurdles between you getting the food that you and your family need. So our revenue model at the moment, this is after a lot of market research into what is really viable. For phase one, we want to sell directly to the pantries at $25 a month. We think this meets a nexus of where it's viable for us to offer the software and also be affordable for even the smallest pantry. Um, and So this number could change in the coming 3 months, but we think that's where we want to be. Phase two is where food banks come in. Now we haven't spoken very much about food banks, and we've spoken a lot about them in the past. And the reason for that is recognizing where we can create value the most and create the most impact immediately. Food banks were not a part of those interactions, but they will be at some point because all of the user data that is collected by these pantries and by the use of the Baguette application, that client information, the customer insights, that's what food banks want, because currently that there's an abstraction between a food bank and the neighbors, right? So once we're able to demonstrate our value proposition, we believe that food banks would buy these pantry licenses in bulk and distribute them to their network of pantries and we'd be offering them a free trial. But post free trial, it would be $20 a license. We have seen that as far as this pricing structure, both for phase one and phase two, really slashes existing prices in the market, the competitors we mentioned earlier, by by a very large margin. Current prices for client tracking software run into the hundreds per month. Saddleback Church, that I had mentioned earlier, could not use anything for the longest time because of these prices. So we would be undercutting the existing status quo by a lot, no, regardless of whether you're referring to a food bank bundle of licenses or selling directly. So last year when we pitched to Pando Days, this is a slide that we had shown you guys. We had said that we are using the lean startup methodology. We're conducting market research. Both phase one and phase two are somewhat ongoing, and that we'd eventually, based on this market research, pick a tech stack, figure out what we should offer in our MVP, so on and so forth, and that down the road we'd build the MVP. Well, I'm happy to say that we're at that down the road part now. So in a few months here, we should be ready to push out our MVP, and we're still on track for beginning our pilot in quarter one. We've identified 3 sites, 2 of them in Orange County, and 1 of them in Riverside. Sites being pantries, I should mention. They're pantries of different sizes. We've yet to officially sign on the MOU with all 3 of them for transparency. But that's only because we wanted to sort of show them the finished product before beginning that. And quarter two, we would be integrating with existing USDA programs such as TFAP and CSFP. These terms are names for very large federal programs which give pantries a ton of food for their clients, and it's very important to be able to mesh with that software. We're actively speaking with a USDA official about being able to offer satisfy the requirements of those programs with our software. Quarter three onwards is really just about commercialization. Something that we're going through simultaneously, we are in the process of incorporating. We have a lawyer that we are speaking to about the best course to take, but we think that incorporating as a public benefit corporation would be the ideal incorporation for us. And we are also applying currently for an SBIR grant. I mentioned the USDA earlier. The individual in question is the one behind the grant on your screen right now. It's a rural development grant, and we think we would qualify for the phase one version of this. And we are a few months out from beginning to apply for that, but that's something we're working on currently. And of course, we're engaging with institutional investors and attempting to fundraise although that has not begun in earnest yet. That's something we're waiting to do around the pilot.
Now, I want to speak on behalf of Baguette's Future because while we were researching this, we recognize that our software is applicable in many different other sectors. For example, today we spoke on behalf of the food pantry ecosystem. But if we were to zoom out in that space, we could see that we could apply our software to grocery stores, community kitchens, and even food rescue in itself by generating events, analytics, and impact reports to better see their difference. Moreover, on the nonprofit sector, we can see that by maintaining these volunteers and having the retention rate on them, they can come back and help assist their communities in homeless shelters, animal rescues, and many different other nonprofits. Moreover, we're looking to tap into the healthcare system because we've recognized that there's a relationship between patient outcomes and improved nutrition regarding to the neighbors that visit these pantries. This compensation structure is something that we've seen even in North Carolina today. But in order to get to this point, I invite all of you to join our mission to empower our neighbors in need. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
All right. Nice job, team. Really incredible presentation. I love the amount of data that you start us off with. You really bring to life the issues in the world that you're working in, as well as the challenge space as a whole. Your last slide made me really happy. I think that there's really a lot of applications of this, and I'm glad that you're already seeing that, right? Finding where are those immediate spaces where you can build that proof of this is only going to help you long term. So really amazing work. I'm excited to throw it to our panel now. We'll have again another about 20-30 minute kind of casual back and forth conversation about this. How might we assess it? What do we think of it? Right? What are some things that they might want to consider as they move forward? And with us today, we've got two wonderful people from the Pando community. We have Margot and Ray representing technology and food. So perfect combination to be talking to this team as well. If Margot looks familiar, it may be because at some point you might have seen her on television where she once hosted her own cooking show. She's been a restaurateur, owned a catering company, and served for many years on the nonprofit side of the food industry to get meals to the hungry, including from her role as board chair of Pasadena's Union Station for Homeless Services. So again, incredible experience to be bringing to the table today. And then we have Ray, who joins us because of his background as a computer scientist with a PhD in the field from UCLA, having cut his teeth on the technology used to decode the human genome. He is chief scientist at Alexandria Technology, a financial technology firm based out of New York and London, and a Pando sponsor. Ray was co-founder of the firm and knows from the inside what it means to conceive of a software solution and then build a company from scratch to deliver it. So again, we've got both sides of this, which is really exciting. Margot, I would love to start with you and have you kick us off, given everything you know about the challenges of getting food to people in need. What are you seeing in this project? What's your response to what we've got here?
Well, I was really impressed with how conceptually you have thought this all through. My big question is, how do you solicit your end user, the establishments that you want to connect with your program? How are you going to reach out to them? And I'm glad you went and covered not only the pantries, but the feeding facilities, the various like union stations. Connecting those is definitely critical because they feed a large volume of people. So let me stop a minute and let you answer my questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the as you said, the two big parties that we have to interest in being able to utilize the platform would be the organizations, so like the pantries and such, and then the neighbors, the folks that have to create accounts and book and schedule. We find that the pantries today do have a very tight relationship with their clientele, understandably so. When you're feeding people, especially for free, like there's these human interactions that are unlike other spaces. They're very tight knit, and we find especially in the case of the pilot sites that we've identified, that if we can convince the pantry to be able to hop on board, that their clients would follow. Um, and it really, that's kind of our strategy. It's like a trickle down strategy where, even in the case of when we're able to rope in food banks, um, that it's them sending licenses through their network of pantries. Pantries sending, the or pushing the use of baguette down their network of clients. So that's how we're looking to incentivize the usage of this. We were with Larda Institute as part of their cohort, and we had the opportunity to speak with a marketing professional, and um, we think that we'll be able to reach a lot of these ethnic communities well through their mode of media consumption, whether that's radio or, in the case of Santa Ana, it's a lot of Hispanic television and radio that we fleshed out the cost of what that would run us to be able to send them a small pamphlet or run an ad, and we're looking at about $30,000 to $40,000 for a city like Santa Ana to be able to reach the Hispanic population there directly to their houses or their TVs. And
That's my concern. How are you gonna get the word out? How are you gonna
Mhm.
spread what you have so you can increase the volume of the people that will be using your programs?
Yeah, I think it would be those two things: is pushing the use of the software from the organization, the pantry, um, and potentially after that to send it, market to them directly.
And I'm assuming that it will start here in California, but then your goal is to take it coast to coast, correct?
To expand, yeah, it would start in Orange County for sure, and then Riverside, and of course Los Angeles. But yeah, expand after.
And then after you get this to that level, how are you going to now you mentioned the pantries. Will you take that same model to go to the feeding establishments, the Union stations, the Door of Hope, all the other nonprofits that go beyond just the pantry but have the feeding facilities where they have need of getting the food to their establishments?
Yeah, to be honest, the, every organization is so unique, which we didn't realize coming in. They do things differently.
Different,
A lot
yeah.
of it is informally organized because it's just on a what resources do you have at your disposal, and what do you need to do kind of a situation. So I can't speak to sort of specific scenarios, but we're just going to have to be flexible and see what works for everybody. But right now we're dealing with a structure that thankfully is replicated across the board, simply that of clients going to pantries and running food drives at banks. So that's something that we know we can replicate across the board.
And I'm sure as you go along, you will learn and then you will adapt accordingly.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take all the time. So, Ray, you please feel free. You go on.
Sure. Yeah, I'm actually really impressed with the progress of this project. And actually, for me, it looks like it's a matchmaking platform, which you match the resources from the demand, right? But in addition to that, you are also routing the resources to the people who need. So for different participants, I mean, so I think one of the question is, how do you demonstrate to all the participants you provide the efficient way to do resource allocation, and also in turn that actually kind of increase the community engagement. So do you have any objective measures to show that to all the participants, because that actually helps your marketing and the funding? Hmm.
Absolutely, yeah. We fleshed out about three to four KPIs that we want to be able to show progress on during our pilot, and I think currently our KPIs all revolve around distribution time. So, like, are we able to reduce the length of the distribution, and
Hmm.
also basically like user signups and frequency. So can we increase the number of people that are coming through the doors on a weekly basis or a monthly basis? That essentially shows that we're able to conduct the work that they're doing today in
Hmm.
a similar fashion, just much more efficiently. And the reason those two are KPIs is because if we can do that, then we know that we're able to collect data in the background in terms of consumer insights, like how frequently is somebody coming, whom are they
Hmm.
collecting for, what kind of foods are they wanting and taking. We're able to do all of that while improving the way they do things today. So what the big reason they're not collecting data today is because it's too much work and it takes too long. Um,
Sure.
so, so if we can basically show that we're doing their work well, then we can justify collecting the information that we are and make that available to local governments and food banks. So that those
So
are
have you,
KPIs to wrap back around.
mm. Have you thought about, so you collect all the data, those are really important and really meaningful and useful. So have you thought about any kind of ways to really utilize the data that's really helpful in terms of the resource allocation? So because that's one of the measures that you could do demonstrate to all the parties, right?
Yeah, we find that local government and food banks are similar in the sense of they really don't have a good understanding of what is the size of the population that we're helping and what is the amount of
Hmm.
demand. Um, some of the there's a set of data points that has been democratized in the food equity space by the organization known as Feeding America. They're like the largest entity in the space, and they have the most influence. And they basically created a basically like a data toolkit or something. I don't know what they
Hmm.
call it, but it lists all of the information that they want collected. And our goal is to just collect that information for every user. So, for example, information that we're collecting is like how far away do you live from a specific area, and then every
Hmm.
time you check in, um, it requires location access in the sense of their location would be enabled for the use of the app, and that lets us know the frequency without them having to like click anything. Um, so basically, things like that is like
Hmm.
that information is standardized in the industry, and we're looking to collect that information as seamlessly as possible.
Yeah, I also want to quickly add on to that. Rohan and I recently went to, or not recently, but a few months ago, went to a convention called Food Access, which was a convention for food banks to congregate. And one of the narratives they're trying to, make them more um, familiar with is changing from the narrative of how much food are we distributing to these local places to what areas are we assisting in. Because as it stands, the narrative of how much food are we distributing is really ambiguous. It could be like we're addressing 10 tons of food, but that food can be like 10 tons of like canned tuna, which is not necessarily that valuable to the communities. That's why
Exactly.
we're changing this narrative to what areas are we helping? That's where we're collecting certain demographics to see, okay, this community is not necessarily being represented or helped in the sense that they need because there's cultural dietary restrictions, right? There's human dietary restrictions, and that's the data that we're trying to collect to measure this and show this.
It sounds like artificial intelligence or any kind of, intelligent analysis of the data actually is needed in terms of how to efficiently allocate resources to different geographical region, different target audience.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that we're going to need to be informed on a little bit more by
Hmm.
people we work with. So we have a decent understanding of it, but it's going
Hmm.
to be shaped by who we work
Yes, because I mean, because you talk about competitive advantages. One is the community engagement. So the other one is how do you demonstrate that your platform is the best use for all the food banks, the pantries, and even the customers by allocating that it's customized to each individual's need, each pantry's need, instead of
with.
just it's a broad platform and easy to use.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. That
In
has to
turn,
be.
it will cut down on wastage because
Exactly.
that way the parties that are going to participate in the pantry will get specifically what they are able to eat and what their either dietary restrictions or their ethnicity really would prefer. So I think that's great. That is
Mm.
really very worthwhile.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that just around the data itself that's already coming up, especially on the positive impact side of it. Something I'm kind of curious is there a way that this data, as being collected in the way that you're seeing, could that be misused in some way, or are there any risks involved that you guys have considered so far?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matthew. I think the two things that we're looking at sort of doing is we keep the information, the user information that we collect, we keep it de-anonymized when we store it. So there's certain things we don't ask for. We don't ask for a driver's license, social security number, or anything like that. We don't even ask for a specific home location as of today. But things like names and such will be encrypted as they're stored. And the other thing is talking about LLM usage, like how we would bring AI into this, that there is a use case for it, but we haven't gone there, especially for MVP, because we're somewhat leery of exposing our data to an LLM. There has to be an abstraction there, where it's parsed before we feed it into um, the model that we don't own or anything. So
Sure.
we just haven't gone there just yet.
For privacy reasons.
Yes.
Yep.
Nice. Thank you, Rohan. Let's go to Lynn.
I think this is really great. I'm so excited about what you all have done in this last year and the possibilities. But I'm thinking that we have a huge test case out here right now, with the fires and the great need and the displaced persons and the great need for food pantries, any kind of food distribution. And I'm wondering how, and I wish you were already out there, in this, but how would you be able to work within this kind of crisis, situation where people might not have the luxury of signing up in advance, or how would they even know, where the pantries are? So I'm just wondering, I'm sure you've thought about this, so I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think speaking specifically to like situations where people are, um, it's not, there's a crisis and you have a mobile pantry operation that's happening in a park or something somewhere. We see that playing out in many cases, even in periods of non-crises. You see mobile pantries popping up in neighborhoods and such. And also, we see a lot of people who may not have phones. All of our software is predicated on clients coming in with a smartphone, and for good reason. There's been an assumption that clients don't have phones, and it's like they do. We've seen the vast majority of them do, and that's why this works. But for the individuals, the unhoused who may come in without a phone, we're trying to figure out what would be the best way to check them in. But for sure, what exists today is the individual that's running the distribution, the volunteer or the staff member on the staff portal dashboard can check people in on their side without the individual needing to check in on their side. So if nobody has downloaded the app and only the pantry operation has the staff dashboard open in front of them, they can still run the distribution and collect minimal information. I think in moments of crisis, like we're not too focused on like because everybody signed up and such, and it's just like, can we run an operation and get everything out there? So, but yeah, for whether it's a mobile pantry or whether somebody has the app downloaded, which we'd encourage them to, this would still work just insofar as can you finish a distribution using the software.
I was also struck by, watching like World Central Kitchen, the way that they operate, with different restaurants, and food distribution. And I'm also curious if you see there's a way to intersect with that kind of food distribution.
Actually, I'm not familiar with that concept. I'm not sure what they do, to be honest.
Oh, well, I mean, the minimal, I mean, I know from reading about them is in a crisis like that. They're operating in Gaza, they're operating in LA, they operate, in Ukraine, all these places that have food issues, and they work with local restaurants, who then, and this is why I'm not sure, either totally volunteer or they're given some money and then they distribute food. So it stays very local in terms of distribution. And I think it's probably a good thing to check into and see
Yeah,
how.
it sounds very interesting. I think we'll have to look into it.
Jose Andreas, he's incredible.
Yeah, and so actually your platform, your technology does provide an easy way for the restaurants or the food suppliers to register what they can offer. And then
Yeah.
you can easily redistribute all those food to the pantries or to the customers.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
no, that's a very salient point. Yeah, I think we have to make note of that too.
Yeah, I
I think
think
in general, so when you have a platform, you're able
Mhm.
with a set number of users that it allows you to be flexible.
Exactly.
yeah, and the way that your presentation is set up, and I know this is intentional, it feels like a pitch, right? Like this is telling a story for a product that you hope to build and see go out there in the world. And just, to Lynn's point and other points around the current crisis, there will be a massive wave of startups that are related to food insecurity, fire safety, evacuation protocols, right? I mean, a place that currently generates a lot of startups and investment in startups was personally hit. So there's going to be a wave of these. That means that you're in a real position to do
Mhm.
this, right? So I would really look closely at some of those examples and then maybe position yourselves to use this moment where people are really trying to make the world a bit better, right? You can be one of those tools for that, totally. So that's something just to really think, how can the narrative of your pitch even tie into what's happening today, really kind of align that as well.
Yeah,
I,
no,
I
completely agree. Yeah,
I concur with Matthew because this is a golden opportunity for you to be attached to a food supplier and then demonstrate your platform's capability. Then that does provide you the really a test case and even the proof that this platform really works really well.
absolutely. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
just speaking about like what where we are climate wise, is like even with the new administration coming in, one of the big concerns is like last October, we OC Food Bank saw their highest usage rate since the pandemic era, which was the highest ever, and that was even prior to funds coming in from the federal government stopping, which
Mhm.
is going to happen now with the new administration. So there's just a lot of stress factors that are sort of taking place in the food equity space right now that will grow, and we are very like aware of that, and so we're trying to, um, as soon as we're done with the pilot, we're going to be looking to push forth as much as possible.
Amazing. Well, we have a few more minutes if there's any other thoughts or questions for the team.
Well, I actually have a question for Margot Margot, do you have connections with like Central Kitchen or that whole network?
No, I really don't, but I am so amazed and impressed by what Jose Andreas has put together.
Yeah.
And I do read up on it and follow him, and I'm noticing that with the particular fire issue, as you brought up, Lynn, that they've put together many restaurants. I think True Food is one of the contributors, and they're up in La Cañada. I thought I read that St. Francis, now whether it's Jose's particular establishment is they're using St. Francis as a fooding staging area. So no, I think it would be really beneficial for Rojas and Alan to look into this because sadly, I keep reading articles that this firestorm that we've all experienced is not going to be a one and only. And going forward, we're going to experience a lot of these various disasters. And your model seems to be ideal on a positive note, even though this is a very sad time of helping people in need. And I think you should definitely look into that particular area. And I think it was kudos to you, Lynn, to bring it up.
Yeah, that's a very salient point. I will definitely be looking into it after. Thank you.
Good luck with it all.
All right. Well, wonderful work again, everybody. And thank you, Ray and Margot, for your comments and insight on this. I think this is a really great team. You know, I hope that the folks from CSU continue this on. Already 2 years of work almost, right? So only can only improve from here. And this is actually the last of our premiere event. So really all I have to say at this point is to say thank you for being here and to Pando on. And please do continue these projects. Check out all of the other work that the other schools and teams have put together on the Pando Populous site. There's a lot of inspiring stuff there. So thank you.